Welcome to the Worldshapers, conversations with authors about their latest books. I'm your host, Edward Willett, and this episode's guest, Annmarie SanSevero, talking about her new short story collection, The Butterfly's Stroke and Other Stories. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Worldshapers. I'm your host, Edward Willett, and this is the podcast where I talk to other authors about their latest work. I am myself an author, but before I get to that, I should explain once again, if you've watched this in the past and you're wondering why the background is so different, I broke my ankle, just over a month ago now, and so I've got about 2 weeks to go before I get to see the surgeon again and find out how much weight I can start putting on it. It's got, plates and screws and all that fun stuff in it. It wasn't a sports injury. It was a choral injury. I was singing at the end of rehearsal for the 50th anniversary reunion concert of the University of Regina Chamber Singers, which I sang in, not as a student, as a member of the community, in the 90s and into the early 2000s. And we were having this wonderful concert, and we just finished the rehearsal, and I was on a choral riser, and they had brought in some little plastic footstools to give it a little extra space because there were too many of us for the risers. And I stepped down on it and it went out from under me and I fell and broke my ankle. So I missed the concert, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to it. But at least I got to sing all the music with all the people many of whom I had sung with when I was in the choir. So I got all that, but I didn't get to sing in front of the audience. Although they did dedicate the concert to me, which was very nice. Anyway, that's why I'm here. I won't show you the broken foot, although the incision is quite something to see, I must say, but probably not suitable for the Worldshapers. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the program where I talk to other authors about their latest work. I am myself an author. My latest work is Fireboy. It's a middle grade fantasy novel, modern day fantasy novel set in Alberta, and it's basically this is interesting because there's a movie out now called Warriors where an entire class disappears. Well, that's what happens in my book, but very different circumstances. They disappear on a field trip. Their bus tilts over. All the kids are gone. All their stuff is still there. The teacher is still in the driver's seat unconscious, and there's one other girl in the back who is unconscious. And the girl who missed it because she had food poisoning is my main character, Sam. And she, was quite concerned and upset and all of that, naturally. And then her best friend, who was on the trip and disappeared, shows up, but he shows up as a face made out of fire in her campfire where she's camping with her dad. And then later he shows up, his whole body made out of fire out back of her house. And she has to figure out what's going on. And she, of course, goes to talk to the girl who was unconscious but didn't disappear. She has no idea what happened. And between the two of them, they have to figure out what's going on. And there's, of course, magic involved and ancient evil and all that good stuff. So it's called Fireboy, and it is out from Shadowpaw Press, which is my publishing company. And you can find it online. You can find it wherever you like. I also recently put out a new edition of another book for young people I wrote, my second novel, which was The Dark Unicorn. It came out way back in the 90s. And it hasn't been available for a long time. And I put it out with a new cover. I gave it a quick edit because, I didn't change a lot, but there were a few places where I found bad sentences or whatever, more of a line edit than any kind of major edit. And it's available now too, only in print on demand and ebook. So you can find it everywhere as well. The Dark Unicorn, and it's set actually in a version of the Dungeons and Dragons world that I created for my campaigns back then. The map it's not a D&D story, but the map gave me the place names and the general relationship of everything. And it's set in a land in which there is no magic, but just north of this barrier, this wall, there is magic, and the Blood Kingdom on that side would really like to take over the kingdom, but doesn't have magic. And a young musician unlucks into this magical artifact that's the key to all this. And then in the company of a young thief, they have to figure out how to stay alive and what to do. So that's The Dark Unicorn, and I would highly urge you to look out for it too. Okay, well, that's enough about me. Let's get on to this episode's guest, who is Annmarie SanSevero. Annmarie grew up in New York City, but was transported to the South in high school. She writes stories about hope, courage, and resilience in fantasy, science fiction, steampunk, and mystery. She loves exploring the human experience and wants readers to feel like they can do more than survive. When she's not writing, Annmarie enjoys learning just about everything, playing violin and singing. She can occasionally be found tap dancing or playing D&D. One day she wants to go LARPing. And the name of the book is The Butterfly's Stroke and Other Stories. And let's talk to Annmarie now. So, Annmarie, welcome to the Worldshapers.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I always start off by looking for connections. One that's interesting is that you're in Little Rock, I believe, Little Rock, Arkansas.
I am.
And you're the first author I've interviewed from Arkansas, but I know Arkansas well because that's where I went to university at Harding University, which is in a little town called Searcy, Arkansas. Searcy, obviously, Arkansas. About 50 miles, I think, from Little Rock. So Little Rock is where we went to see movies. I remember seeing Excalibur in Little Rock because that was the era when I was in university, and the first Superman I saw in Little Rock, and so I know the area well.
I've been to Harding a few times because that's where they typically held our state homeschool convention, where all the big curriculum people come in, and I homeschooled my 4 kids. They're all grown now, but so I took a yearly trip to Searcy to Harding.
Oh, wow, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a lovely campus. I haven't seen it now since the mid 80s, and there's new buildings and stuff since I was there. But when I see the pictures, I still recognize most of it. So
yeah,
I would like to get back there sometime.
You can even see movies there now.
Yeah, well, they used to show them in the main auditorium. We would get movies, but of course, it being a Christian school, they were actually censored sometimes, and there'd be tape over certain parts, and the sound would drop out. And it's like, okay, we're all 19, 20, 21. We've heard these words, but anyway.
That's right.
But that was in the 70s. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. So let's talk about you, though. You're in Little Rock, but you're not from Little Rock originally. So tell me about your background and growing up and how you got interested in writing and your education and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I actually grew up on Staten Island in New York City, and I was the nerdy girl in a family of people who did not care about education. In fact, have you ever seen or read the book Matilda?
Yes. Well, I haven't read the book, but I've seen the stage version and, of course, the movie as well.
Yes. Well, that line where Danny DeVito was like, "You can't get anything from a book. You can't get better on this TV." My dad had actually said to me once. So I used to sneak away to the library and escape into my worlds and learn about courage and how people could do great things, and I didn't have to be scared. And so that started my passion for reading. And then I hoped to become a writer eventually, but life really was tough. And I had 4 kids. And then when my youngest was 2, my husband left. And so suddenly I was like a single mom raising 4 kids.
Ooh.
And I kind of put all my own dreams to the side a bit. And I was really focused on surviving at first, and then wanting to do a good job for my kids. As they got older, I finally realized, you know what, if I don't start this, it'll never happen. And so I carved out some time during my day. At first, it was only 15 minutes. As they got older, I could make it an hour, and to just make sure I wrote every day. And I am finally starting to see all of that hard work pay off. I'm so thrilled. I have this short story collection that we'll talk about in a minute that's out now. I have a middle grade novel coming out in the spring. And I'm just thrilled that, when you work towards something, even just a little bit at a time, that's progress. And you can make your dreams happen.
So what was the first short story that you actually placed somewhere or sold somewhere?
First one I sold. So most of the short stories I've written, I've been entering into Writers of the Future. I have this really big dream of winning that. I may pro out first, but fingers crossed. The first one I sold was to Sally Port magazine. That came out this past July. I did another one too, but it's a charity anthology. So it wasn't like sold. I wasn't paid, but it was a charity that meant a lot to me. It was Superstars Writing Seminars. They put out a charity every year that funds their scholarship program. And I was a recipient of that scholarship. And that was sort of what helped me launch my career. And so now I always submit to that anthology. So That one was their Weird Wilderness anthology. The theme was cryptids, and it had to have an epistolary element in it as well. So
It's really narrow.
yeah, she does have Lisa Mangum's usually the editor, and she always has a very specific focus. So I didn't really know a lot about cryptids, but I can Google. And I chose to do 2 cryptids, one from Arkansas, the Fook monster, and one from New York, where I grew up. And they were like elementary school cryptid kids who were pen pals. And one of them wanted to have a human friend desperately, and the other one wanted to be a humanologist. And so he would give him this advice about how to make a human friend, and it was terrible advice. So
Sounds like a lot of fun.
it was. What I loved about that was it was my first attempt at being funny in writing. And I had 4 kids telling me, Mom, you're not funny. Don't try this. Please don't do this. And when Lisa accepted it and I got the contract, I was like, I am funny. So,
Yeah, kids. My daughter she's grown too. She's 24 now. And she's barely read anything I've written. And it's not that she doesn't think I'm a good writer. I think it's that she's afraid that she won't like something I've written, and then she wouldn't know how to tell me that. So better to play it safe. And
your daughter sounds sweet. My kids have no problem telling me my stuff's terrible.
well, I guess at least you do have that built-in focus group, I guess, for anytime you're writing for young people, or did anyway. So.
Yes. In fact, one of my girls at one point, she was reading the manuscript for the middle grade novel as I was writing it. She would ask for me to print out a chapter after I wrote it. And she was upstairs and she came barreling down the stairs. And she said, if you kill off Crowder, I will never speak to you again. It's like,
did you? That'd be a spoiler, I guess. But.
I have to read the book to see where my relationship with my daughter stands.
So were you always, I mean, we all start as readers, and you mentioned going to the library. Were you always kind of drawn to the science fiction and fantasy side of things, the fantastical?
Yeah, that and mystery. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a complete nerd. And so there really isn't a subject I don't love. And I mean, I don't really read horror or erotica or anything like that, but I love fantasy, sci-fi, mystery, historical fiction. I read nonfiction all the time. I'm just a nerd. And so, but I enjoy the fantasy and sci-fi the most when I'm writing because I get to make stuff up and use my imagination.
Yeah.
And the science fiction, I actually have to, do some research because you can't have too much hand wavium or then it's just straight fantasy. So.
Yeah, I was like that. I mean, I grew up reading. I remember winning awards in elementary school for reading the most books of anybody in the class, and I still have them somewhere. They're these little ceramic horses. And I read absolutely everything. I read dog stories and horse stories, but I always gravitated to science fiction, fantasy somewhat, and then that's what I started writing. My first short story was called. I was 11. It was called Castor Glass Hypership Test Pilot, which kind of shows you that my course was set early on. If I ever find that story, it's going on the web. I know a copy exists somewhere, but I haven't seen it in years. It's in a box somewhere, I guess.
Oh, it has to go on there.
My mom typed it up for me, so it's properly formatted and everything.
Oh, that's neat. I love that your mom was involved in that.
So let's talk then about the book, The Butterfly's Stroke. There, I got it right. How did it come about? I mean, some of these stories, were they stories that you entered in the Writers of the Future? And so this is a collection of those? Were there some original stuff in it? What is it? Describe the book to me.
They are all stories that I entered into Writers of the Future that were like almost winners. Every one of them got at least honorable mention.
Pretty good.
And there's semifinalists in there. The semifinalist one, that was like one of my biggest heartbreaks because I learned later that it was almost a finalist from someone who knows the head judge. And apparently they had an equal number of stories that were good enough to be finalists, but she had to remove one.
Oh.
And mine just randomly got removed. So but that's okay. It's really spurred my I know I'm going to at least produce one short story a quarter as I enter that competition. And it's done great things for my production value and my confidence that I can write quickly.
Well, it's like, there's nothing like, what's the quote from, is it Johnson? There's nothing like knowing a man's going to be hanged in the morning to focus his mind tremendously. So deadlines have that kind of
Yes.
Although, of course, there's also the Douglas Adams one, which is, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they go by. Yeah, just having something to work towards in this, it always helps me. If I have a contract, I'm much more focused than if I'm writing something on spec. I find that for sure.
Yes, yes.
So,
Jim Butcher one time said, he was at Superstars. I go to Superstars every year. And
nice.
Someone had asked him what he does, like how he gets his muse and what he does when he's blocked. And he sort of laughed and said, muse? You want to know what your muse is? You've got a mortgage. That's your muse. So
yeah, that certainly has an effect. I've been a freelancer now since 1993, but fortunately I married an engineer, which was a really good career move, but still, so there's always scrambling and trying to find something that pays. I'm very familiar with that.
Yes.
You're not making a living as a writer, I would presume, writing short fiction. What do you do as a day job?
So I have 3 day jobs. I work as a content writer for a dental web company. So I write about 60 blog posts a month about dental stuff.
Words are words.
Yeah, so exciting. And so, and then I teach one class online for BYU Idaho and their pathway program, which is Introduction to Computer Programming. So I'm teaching students from around the world Python. I have students from Africa, South America, Europe. It's so amazing. There's 81 students in this class. And for most of them, English is a second language. I'm just completely blown away by their commitment. And especially like some of the African students, they have to walk to another village where their church is to get internet. Mm-hmm. And then they do all of their homework there, and then they walk home, and that's hours. And I'm like, I should not be complaining about my obstacles. And then I do a lot of dev editing for people. I was a dev editor for a ghostwriting company for a while, and I just decided to go freelance because it pays better. So
yeah, I've done almost all those things, not the dental stuff, but similar. My first published book was not fiction at all. It was using Microsoft Publisher for Windows 95. That was my first published book because, whatever pays the bills.
That's right.
But I think, and I've talked, lots of authors who do all sorts of writing, but even the dental content stuff, you're still honing the ability to put words together. And I was a newspaper reporter to begin with, and talking about deadlines, it was a weekly newspaper, and the paper came out on Wednesday, and it had to be full of words, and you had to write those words. So, but it wasn't fiction; it was all sorts of things. But I find that the very act of having to do all that writing helps you when it comes to doing the writing you really want to do, which is the fiction.
I agree, and it helps you, I think, to be more creative in a way. Like, how many things can I say about dental implants? And I have to find something unique to say about it every time. So that's helpful.
Yes, I can see that being an ongoing challenge.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the fiction, this is the old hoary, where do you get your ideas? But what are the seeds from which stories spring for you? I always try to not say, where do you get your ideas? Although it's a perfectly legitimate question.
It is a legitimate question.
Where do stories come to you from?
So first, I will tell you, some writer friends and I were just joking about this very question the other day, because it's the one thing we get asked every time. So mine come from so many different places. And in this short story collection, I think I actually put a paragraph before each story of where I got the idea for it. One example would be The Butterfly Stroke, the lead story. I had been reading, I think I told you I'm a nerd. I read science websites for fun. I actually have science textbooks in my house, not just because I'm homeschooling, like stuff I didn't even teach my kids. I have this whole entire lab with 2 professional microscopes, all these beakers, all this other stuff. And all legal. so, so I was reading this website, and this was back when Elon Musk had just gotten approval for the Neuralink for human trial.
Okay, yeah.
And so I read about that and I was fascinated. I did all the reading I could on that. And I started thinking, what if we could pair it with a stent below the spine, and it could connect wirelessly to the spine and allow people who couldn't walk to walk again. It was just one of those things where I do what if a lot. And so that's where that one came from. My story, The Heresy of Peace, I was watching Babylon 5. I love that show so much. And the medical officer had made this offhanded comment about the bubonic plague and how they actually they were killing the thing that could have solved the problem sooner. They assumed the devil brought the plague, and because cats were the devil's familiars, they were killing off all the cats, which of course is the one thing that could take care of the rat problem, which was the fleas that had the plague. And it was that and a combination of watching a news story about some people in conflict, generational conflict. And I thought, what if two enemies had a plague, like there was a plague for one of them, and the only solution was the people they hated. And so it was, that kind of idea. Most of the time it's I hear something offhanded or I read something, and then my mind starts going. I have a weird mind that just starts taking off on tangents.
Well, sounds like you're making connections between different things and banging them up against each other and finding story in the collision.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so sometimes it's stuff I've seen, sometimes it's stuff I've read, sometimes it's a conversation I overheard, at the grocery store, and I'm in line and hear somebody say something, and suddenly I'm writing down a whole bunch of stuff. And anyway.
Do you ever get a visual image that you start with? That's something that's fairly common with people, I think.
Yes, I think in pictures, which has been a problem for my writing because it's all there in my mind. And so I actually, after I get the first draft down, have to go back and look at it and go, okay, if you weren't in my brain, can you picture what I'm picturing? So then I have to go in and put in all the setting and that stuff because, people can't read mind, which is something they should be grateful for.
Yeah, I have a simile for that I've used sometimes, which is that when you get the story in your head, it's like this beautiful crystal Christmas ornament, beautiful glass ornament. Then you smash it, and then you try to glue it back together with words so that it still looks sort of like what you had in your head, and other people can appreciate it, but it's never quite looks perfect as what you had in your head.
I love that.
That's what it feels like to me anyway.
Yes.
So let's talk about your writing process. You have an idea. How do you go about, do you plan ahead, or do you just, I have this idea and just start writing and see where it goes?
I try to plan ahead. In my personal life, I'm an obsessive planner. Like I have daily, weekly, monthly goals that are all planned out meticulously. My writing, I try to do that. I know what I want the story to be about. I know the characters. I know the theme, like the overarching theme in the story, and hopefully the ending. But what I have found is sometimes as I am writing, my characters don't cooperate. And so it goes a little bit different. And then I explore that and see, maybe they had a better idea than I did. And sometimes I like where it ends up. And other times I'm like, nope, we're going back to my plan. Sorry. And that has served me really well. I have some friends who stick to their plot no matter what. I have some friends that are complete. Now we call it discovery writing. It used to be called pantsers.
Yes.
And so
plotters and pantsers, and now people don't like that for some reason. But.
Yes, I tend to call mine more like plantsing. So I do have a plot that I want to do, but I am open to change if I think it'll serve the story better.
When I started doing this, and it was audio only, for a while I did full transcripts, but that was too much work, so I stopped. But I did have an early AI transcribing software that was but I've discovered I had to do so much editing before I was comfortable putting those transcripts up there that it was adding 4 or 5 hours to every one of these. So I quit doing it. But it always turned the word Panzer into Panzer, the German tank. So you'd have people saying, "Yeah, I'm a Panzer." Oh, well, that's unusual.
That's funny. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
One of my daughters had actually figured out how every time her sister Sarah typed her name into her phone, it would automatically change Sarah to Satan. So it's like,
yeah, autocorrect is
yes.
dangerous in that regard. So, do you like have a set time you work every day, or do you fit it in around everything else? Do you, and also, are you there are still people that do like handwritten first drafts, and most of us don't. And I doubt you do, but if that's the way you work, that would be interesting.
No, I'm a computer gal for typing. When my kids were at home, I would try to write in the morning after I have my normal morning routine thing. But I mean, you have kids. That's
one.
totally.
I only have one.
Oh, okay. So 4, and they're totally unpredictable sometimes. And because they're my focus, that meant sometimes writing had to go later. I used to have to write after they were all in bed. So it was sometimes 1 in the morning.
It's 7 o'clock, everybody, go to bed.
Yes. Well, and it ended up being like 1 a.m. half the time. Now that they're all grown-ups, I do my writing first thing and till my paid job. I work from home. All my jobs I'm able to do from home. And my bosses are amazing, and they don't care when I do the work as long as it gets done. And so I know I'm going to do that work I have to do because I need those jobs. So I get the creative stuff done first when my mind is the freshest, and then I wrestle with, dental crowns later in the day. So
how long does it take you to write a story? I mean, it depends on the length, obviously, but
yeah, and it depends on the story. And the one that's being judged by Writers of the Future right now. Come on, win. That one took me a little longer because even though I love science fiction, I've stayed away from like hard sci-fi because Orson Scott Card is one of the judges and some other people.
He was on my program at one point. So.
Oh, neat. Well, I'm totally afraid of getting something wrong. And then like Orson showing up at my house with a gun saying, "Stop writing sci-fi." And so I put it off for a long time. But this one, I did so much research. And it was for one scene that probably is like a page of the entire story. But that research took me 3 days.
Yeah.
And, but I'm proud of it. And so.
Yeah, you can go down rabbit holes too when you start researching stuff, and especially if you're interested in it anyway. It's like 3 hours later, and you wandered far afield from whatever it was you were looking up, and you're reading about something else entirely. But
yeah, I have to set limits on myself because I have so much on my plate. But that was helpful. I can usually write 1,000 words a day without a problem. And that might take me a couple of hours, depending on the topic. If it's an emotional topic that's harder for me, I have like empathy on steroids. And even though I know it's fake, I can almost feel what's happening to the characters. And so I'm like, oh, this is awful. Can I think of any other way to do this? And
so, don't kill Crowder.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you have beta readers or anything like that? People who look at your stories before you finish them?
Yeah, I have some. For my Writers of the Future stories, my mentor always looks at them first and gives me, he's very good about leaving my voice, my words, and we'll just say, hey, I think maybe this third try fail might need some extra work. Then for my other fiction, I have some friends that will look at it, all of whom are writers. I decided I needed to find someone who wasn't a writer to look at them. And so I recently recruited just a friend who likes to read. The problem I have is, especially if it's a short story, she has told me many times, if you don't turn this into a novel, I'm going to have problems with you. And so she said that about 6 of them now. So there's only so many I can turn into novels. But
So once you've had that feedback, you do a final edit, and then you say, that's it, I'm done.
for the short stories, yes, I really can only do like 2 passes, and then I have to turn it in. I'm working on book 2 for the contract I got for the middle grade series. They contracted me for a 3-book series. And so I'm working on book 2. Book 1 was my first novel ever. And so when you say final, I have some files in my computer that's like marked by magic final. And then there's another one that says marked by magic, really the final. And then another one that says marked by magic, this is the actual final.
Yeah.
So
I have some files like that too.
yes. So I have to come up with a better
Especially when
system.
I'm sending it to as a publisher, I'm sending the PDFs to the printer, and a couple of times it's been, here it is, final, and then the next one says corrected, and then the next one says corrected again. Use this one with capital letters. So they only let you do that so often before they start charging you for I try to. Usually it's something minor, and I caught it at the last possible minute. But yeah, I think we all do that.
Yeah. In fact,
so I was going to say, now the stories collected over a period of time, obviously, but now they're a book. So how did that come about? And also your publisher, somebody I know, he's here in Canada, Mark Lefebvre.
yes.
And so how did you make connections with him?
So I know him from Superstars.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I was working really hard on book 2 and shopping all these stories. But when you're shopping a short story, it takes between 8 months and a year before you hear anything.
And then it pays almost nothing once
right. And I had just sold, like, I still do the short story market. I still send stuff out. I have 2 things I'm waiting to hear back on now. But I needed money. And I was thinking about, and I'm going through the publishing program at Western Colorado University that Kevin J. Anderson runs. Mm-hmm. So I'm in that, and I'm learning about publishing. And I love working with traditional publishers, which my middle grade book is, but they're also interminably slow.
Yes.
Crazy slow. And I have a lot of stories in my head, and I just feel like some of them I can't wait. And so in this case, I had decided maybe I will try some of the things I'm learning and collect these and self-publish them just to see what happens. Spotify had already, one of the reps from Spotify had already contacted me about putting some of my short stories up there. And that got me thinking about, maybe I could self-publish a collection. But I'm new in the program and really didn't feel confident in my ability. So I talked to Mark. I just messaged him and said, hey, I'm thinking about self-publishing these, but honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. So how would you feel about me asking you like 6 bazillion questions? And he is such a generous spirit that he was like, yeah, that's fine. And then I don't know if it was because of the number of questions, but a couple of days later, he said, hey, send me the stories and I'll have better advice for you. And I sent him the stories. And then a couple of days after that, he said, hey, would you mind if I publish them with my company, like Stark Publishing? And I was like, are you kidding me? I have no idea what I'm doing. This would take all that stress off of me. And I would be honored for you to be the publisher for these. And he's such a great guy anyway. And so that's how that happened. We're working on the audiobooks now. Eventually we're going to have where I'm narrating them, but we're doing something else in the meantime so that people who have vision problems and can't read physical words will have something. And that's the goal now. I think from now on, I'm going to have some short stories I shop and some short stories I gather and collect and put out in the world as a book. So.
And the book is out now. When was it released?
It was released September 2nd, so just not too long ago, 8 days ago. And I've gotten a few reviews. It hasn't been out very long, and I'm a new writer, so there's not a bunch of people standing in line to go, oh, Annmarie's new book is out. Like, so eventually that will happen. But right now I'm a baby writer.
Should mention our other connection, which is Mickey Mickelson is the publicist that pointed you out to me. Of course, he's been my publicist for a very, very long time, and he's also my Shadowpaw Press publicist. So he certainly finds opportunities like this, podcasts and things like that, for the writers as well. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, he's super, super nice too. And then I have lots of writing friends who are sharing it that are being very generous with their influence, I would say, I guess. And I did do something, and I asked Mark first because, like, I don't want to get you or me in trouble. But Brandon Sanderson has a short story collection coming out in a few months, and so I did this little graphic that said, "Having trouble waiting on Brandon's short story collection? Try mine." Sent that out, so we'll see.
Don't think it would get you in trouble.
No, and he knows Brandon very well, and he said he is so supportive of new writers. So I wasn't worried about it at all.
I was on a panel with him once years ago, and he complimented my whatever I had to say about magic systems. I thought that was a nice compliment coming from Brandon Sanderson. So.
Yeah.
So let's just, before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you what you're working on, but you've already said what you're working on, which is the second book. And so tell me about the middle grade trilogy, I guess it is.
Yes, it's called Marked by Magic, and it is a fantasy steampunk mashup. And it's about a young boy who, I would say Harry Potter age in the first book. And so he was actually 12 and Harry was 11. So he's got 1 year on Harry. He lives in a world that has rejected magic and goes by what they consider the noble art of machines. So hence all the steampunk stuff. Like, he passes notes to a friend in class with this little mechanical spider and things like that. But he has a mother that no one is allowed to talk about at all. So he knows nothing about her. And it turns out she is from, spoiler alert, I don't think there were a lot of 13-year-olds watching this. His mother is from the magical kingdom that they rejected. And his father didn't find that out until after she had passed away. And that to him felt like a betrayal. So he kind of cut any idea about who his mother is out of his life, out of his son's life. And at some point, because my main character does have that direct bloodline, a magical rune shows up on his wrist and marks him as a magic keeper. And he's trying to figure out, this is illegal. I don't know what to do. And at the same time, he can't help that this thing is happening. And then someone's trying to kill him. So he's got to figure out what's going on. And then his dad is on a mission and disappears. And the only way to rescue his dad is to learn the magic to save his father. But he's worried it's going to cost him his father's love. So that's the main theme of the book was you can have two different parents. Now, I don't say this to the kids, but the main theme of the book is your parents can be completely different and you can love both of them, and accepting both of them doesn't mean you're rejecting one, even if they're completely different. So that's what I wanted to get across without saying that, and hopefully give the kids a really fun time. There are some great characters in. I've always heard, don't worry about your first novel. It's just practice. Don't keep trying to sell it. But I was so in love with these characters that I just kept trying to sell it anyway. And it got sold. So,
So when does the first one come out?
It's slated for spring of 2026. They haven't given me an exact date. And, traditional publishing is a little slower. So I'm hoping it's going to be out on time. I think it will be, because I'm pretty good at meeting my deadlines and keeping in touch with the editor and publisher and things like that. Maybe they're tired of that, but it's important to me, and I love the story. And I have book 2 due at the end of this month. So I've been writing furiously. I will tell you a secret that now will not be a secret from my publisher, but I had planned on book 1 as being a one and done. And because I have so many stories in my head, and I was already working on a YA, and they contacted me and said they wanted to publish it, but they want to make it into a series. So do I have 2 other ideas? Well, I didn't want to blow my opportunity, but I did not have 2 other ideas. And so I think that was like the most furious prayer I'd ever said in my life. And then just spat out 2 random things that I thought would be like cool. And she said, "Oh, we love that. Okay, we'll send you the contract." And it wasn't until after I signed the contract and it was time to write book 2, and I was sitting in front of my computer, that I realized the only thing I know about that story is the one sentence I told her. And so I've been having to make up a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
There's this thing going about, somebody wrote a negative review on, I don't have no idea what the book was. I've just seen this a few times on something on Amazon. And one of the complaints was, it just reads like the author's just making it up as he goes along.
I've seen. That's kind of the point of writing.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on, and best of luck with the short story collection and with the middle grade novel when it comes out next year. They both sound terrific, and it's been very nice to talk to you and connect to somebody in Arkansas again. Yay!
Well, thank you for being so gracious.
And thanks to Annmarie for that great conversation. It was fun to talk to somebody in Arkansas, which, as I said off the top, I know well. That's where I went to university, although I haven't been there in many, many years now. But I have a lot of relatives also in Missouri, which is just north of Arkansas. And I used to live in Texas, which is west of Arkansas. So it's kind of my part of the world originally. Anyway, that was a great chat. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I hope that you will come back for more chats in the future as I continue to talk to authors about their latest work. Just a few things before I sign off. First of all, you can find the Worldshapers online at theworldshapers.com. Where there's a web page for every episode and a little more information about the books. And there's even full transcripts, as I mentioned once upon a time. I was telling Annmarie this afterwards, but once upon a time I did full transcripts, but it was too much work. Nevertheless, you can find some of those if you go back for some of the guests that I talked to. It's also on YouTube, which may be where you're watching this, of course, on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Edward Willett, where you can also walk with me around my home city of Regina, except not right now because I have a broken ankle. So there won't be any of that for a while. But nevertheless, you can find a lot of those videos as well on my YouTube channel. The Worldshapers is also on X at The Worldshapers and on Facebook at The Worldshapers. You can find me at edwardwillett.com, my main website. You can find me, as I said, on YouTube at Edward Willett. You can find me on Facebook at edward.willett. You can find me on Instagram at Edward Willett Author. You can find me on X at eWillett. And there's some others too, but those are the main ones. So that's if you want to find out more about me. And I mentioned, of course, that Fireboy is out from my own Shadowpaw Press. Shadowpaw Press is a traditional publishing company with a lot of books out there. The most recent one, other than mine, there's 2. There's Gods of a New World. I interviewed the author Ryan Melsom a while back. It's a very timely science fiction story about tech billionaires remaking the world with AI and trying to do even more than that. And there's also a new reprint of a fantasy novel, The Night Girls, set in Toronto by James Bowes, on the program as well a while back because I published a couple of others of his. And that's out now as well. Coming up next at Shadowpaw Press, I've got a poetry collection, First Light, Last Light by Glenn Sorstad, who was Saskatchewan's first poet laureate and first provincial poet laureate in Canada. He's one of Canada's most beloved poets and sort of an elder icon of the Canadian literary world. So that's coming out very soon now. And also at a short story collection, literary short story collection called Waiting for the Piano Tuner to Die by Harriet Richards is coming out as well. So there's lots coming out from Shadowpaw Press that isn't science fiction and fantasy, but I still do publish some science fiction and fantasy as well. You can find Shadowpaw Press online at shadowpawpress.com, on X at Shadowpaw Press, on Instagram at Shadowpaw Press, on Facebook at Shadowpaw Press. Okay, that really is it. Thanks so much for watching this episode. And as I said, please keep coming back as I continue to talk to other authors about their latest work. That's it for this time. Bye for now.